So, very good morning to you. This is Dr. Ayesha Butalia here. So, today's session we will be discussing about the character set, constants, identifiers, keywords, data types, and more detail onto the data types. Okay, as a computer engineer, what actually you should know about the data types, we will be discussing about that more technically. So, yesterday in previous lecture, we were discussing about normally how to add two numbers statically to run the code, also through dynamically using scanf. Okay, so just going into more detail of the character set. So a character set, character denotes an alphabet, okay, digit or special symbol. In our one of the recordings, we had discussed about this general program structure, where in normal English like language we have alphabets, whereas in C language we've got alphabets, digits, and special symbols. In words, in English language, they are constants, variables, keywords. As sentences, they are instructions. As paragraph, they are program. If you want, you can draw this diagram or take a pic of it immediately. Okay, so that you correlate, because then it becomes very easier for you to understand a C language, because it is also a language basically, and it's a middle level language. Middle level language is a low level language also and a high level language also. A high level language is a language which is totally English like language, and it is more user friendly, whereas a low level language is a more hardware related language, okay, which is more closer to the hardware, whereas high level language is more closer to the software. So if you are doing system programming or hardcore programming related to hardware programming, then you require an assembly language. That's a low level language. So you require an assembler which converts your low level language into a machine level language. Whereas a high level language is more English like, more closer to the user. It's more of a software based for application programmers, and you require a compiler to convert a high level language into a machine level language. But C language is a middle level language. That means it has got features of both hardware integration and software integration. So that's a very, very powerful feature of C language, and it's a middle level language. So if you want to learn C language, first, as any language, you have alphabets, words, sentences, and paragraphs. In C, we have got all these three. So let's take one by one. Instructions, we already took last time how to run a program. So every line of code is nothing but an instruction. A block of instructions become function, and various functions can become a program. Without functions also you can run the block of instructions, which we did the programs earlier. That is also called as program. Okay, so we actually did the instruction and programs, simple programs, we may be using sophisticated techniques like loops, conditional statements, switch case, a lot of stuff for improving the instruction part and the program part. Okay, so this basically we have done, but we will do it in a more detail in the upcoming lectures. So today we'll go into the basics of these first two parts, that is alphabets, digits, special symbols, constants, variables, and keywords. So we are in the flow. First we did the program structure in that diagrammatical way. Then we that was our first lecture. In our previous lecture, we saw the simple instruction and the program. And today we are going to detail about the modules. So character, as we said, it is any alphabet, digit, or special symbol used to represent information. So valid alphabets, number, and special symbols allows in C are alphabets A to Z, capital, small, digit 0 to 9. Special symbols. So every special symbol mentioned here has its own significance. Okay, and it is very easy to comprehend. As and when we learn C language in detail, you will come to know exactly what each and every is. But if you are very curious about it, all these symbols you just type on Google special symbols in C language in detail. You will get every symbol, its description, its use, Okay, if you want, I'll share you it there in the description box, but otherwise it's very easy. But instead of going into the theory part, as and when you'll be using these symbols, you will understand. Okay, for example, when you will be learning pointers, at that time we will be using star, okay, this asterisk sign and the ampersand more. As ampersand we've already used in scanf, and I told you that it means address of. So whatever user is inputting from the console using scanf, that value goes and gets stored in the address of the variable. Suppose I say ampersand I. So ampersand I means the I is the name of the memory location we've given for convenience sake. So the moment say ampersand I, it will go to the address of the location named I. If you want, you can write down. Ampersand means it is the address of the location named by the variable. So if it is ampersand I, it means the value will get stored to the address of the location named I. Right? So these are the special symbols. In yesterday's lecture, we also discussed about the not operator. So not operator is the exclamation here, the exclamation sign, which we use in C language. So this is also a special character. So likewise, we saw in our previous lecture the conditional operator, the ternary operator, question mark and colon. So this question mark can be used for a conditional statement and so on. This double quotes we have used in printf and scanf statements. Okay, this is the or operator, the single line. The slash we can use as /n/f for /n for the new line. So this is also a special character. For bit operators, we can use these first symbol which is mentioned here, the cross sign which is mentioned here. Okay, so these are used for bitwise operations. Of course, the parentheses are used for functions, for any logical operations, and so on. Then comes the identifiers. So identifiers are user-defined words used to name of entities like variables, arrays, functions, structures, etc. So till now, we have only learned about variables. So variables is nothing but we give a name to a particular data type. So if you are writing int I, so int I means I is a name given to a memory location of 2 bytes. Okay. And why 2 bytes? Because it is integer. It is of data type integer. If it would have been char C, then C is a name to the memory location of 1 byte because character requires 1 byte. If it is float F, so F memory location of 4 bytes would be assigned of name F. So likewise for variables, it can be different data types. Then arrays, of course we will learn arrays into the details. It is a combination of homogeneous data types. Okay, so in one int I is a variable where only one integer can be stored. But if you define an array of say 10 of integer, then you can store 10 integers, okay, in one go. How? We will learn that in detail. Array is a very specialized topic and very much used in C language. So we have a separate lecture on that upcoming. So ultimately identifiers are the user-defined word. You can write int I, or you can write int Ayesha, or you can write int Butalia, whatever you can write, that's up to you. Your name should actually can anything, and it will not give you a syntactical error. But it is suggested that if you want to become a good coder, the variable name should be relevant. Why? Because somebody else, if it tries to read your code, it should understand a bit. Because when you leave the company, your code will be used by other. So it should be readable. You can write comments also to understand your identifiers. Even you can take another's project. So even you should find it comfortable. So that is why a good coder should write a relevant names. Otherwise, it won't give a syntactic error, but that is suggested guidelines. So name should only consist of alphabets, digits, and underscore. It cannot have special characters. Okay, so if you're writing variable names also, it should not have special characters, only alphabets. Okay, both uppercase and lowercase is allowed, digits and underscore. First character should be an alphabet and or underscore. Okay, it should not be a digit in case of C language. This is syntax. Okay, you should know about it. But as you practice, you will you need not bug up all this. Sometimes by mistake, if you write a digit, it will give you an error. So immediately go through these guidelines, this PDF which I've shared with you earlier, and you can go through the guidelines. You will understand that why this error is coming. 2 or 3 times when you will solve the errors of integers, then you become an expert how to initialize and declare integers. It's not a big deal. So name should not be a keyword. Okay, suppose main. Main is already a function name. You can't write int main because that is a function. So you can't use keywords as the variable names. And that's valid also, no? Otherwise you'll get confused. Since C is case sensitive, upper and lower case considered differently. Okay, some programming languages are not case sensitive, but since C language is a middle level language and it is handling on the hardware level also, so it has to be case sensitive for having an efficient interpreter. So for example, code or COD in caps are different identifiers. Note it down. Identifiers are generally given in some meaningful name as suggested. Okay, just now I told you this. So any identifier name may be long. Some implementation recognize only first 8 characters. Most recognize 31 characters. ANSI standard compiler. Okay, it's a standard compiler used by all operating system. You can go and check the full form of it so that you learn more about it when you search for that on Google. Otherwise, our lecture will become very lengthy. Some invalid identifiers are 5CP, int, REC, average, number, etc. When you search ANSI format, you will understand more about invalid identifiers. So let's have this on hold right now. So there are certain words which are reserved for specific tasks. They are called as keywords. So for example, int, short, signed, unsigned, they are all keywords. Okay. Int is for declaring an integer variable. Short, I'll tell you, there is a particular range for integer, but if suppose you want the range to be decreased, then you can use short. Now, why we are using it? Because if suppose the age doesn't require a very big integer, right? Because age cannot be 1,000, 1 lakh. So maximum one can have is a 3-digit figure if it's 100 plus. So you need not require an integer for that. Short means having a less data bytes can also be useful. So that we will see upcoming. So each and every keyword I will give you as an homework that you go and check on Google every keyword. Try to analyze what is the meaning and then also take an example. Okay, so we can have a separate lecture on all the keywords, but right now sticking on to that topic, and if you don't want that lecture recording of only keywords you can even find from YouTube, okay, on my channel, Ayesha Butalia, or on anybody else's lecture on keyword YouTube, you will get it. Otherwise on Google, you will get a list along with examples. So let's continue with data types. Data types, there are, C has 4 main data types versus basic built-in data types. Okay, so this is int, float, double, and character. Right? So int is integer, that is, it has no decimal. Float, it has got decimal. Double is like float only, but it has got exponents, and then we can have more byte size for float. So if you want more byte size for float, then you need to convert it into double. Of course, we will see it more, so your clarity would be there and your confusion will be solved. Character is your alphabets. Okay, so integer requires 2 bytes to get stored in memory. Float requires 4 bytes, double 8, and character 1. Now again, this depends upon programming language and compiler. This we are discussing about the C language right now. Enumeration data type, when you have a specified list. Okay, for example, you have colors, rainbow colors. So you have 7 rainbow colors. If you are doing some analysis, you are programming on rainbow colors, so you will have a list of only 7 colors. So you can have a set of 7 colors defined as data type, so that any else color is not identified by the compiler and gives an error. So if you have some limitation on some combination and you want that the user should not type anything else regarding that, and the program should not use any other input except that set, then you can define a data type called enum. We'll take that example in the upcoming lecture, so don't worry. Derived data type, like from integer we can have more complicated data types, so they are called derived data types. So they are pointers, arrays, structure and union. Okay, so that we will go into each. We will have separate lecture on pointers, separate lecture on arrays, structure, union and so on. And void data type, this is a very special data type, hence it is categorized specifically as the 4th, and that is void. Void means nothing. It's not zero. Just mark a note. 0 is a value, whereas void means nothing. Okay, it has its own importance. For example, in our first lecture when we saw main, if has a return type int, then it should return a 0. But if you do not write anything before main, okay, so it is by default void. Void means nothing. So even if you do not write return statement at the end of the main function, it will not give you an error, because by default you have mentioned, either you specify mention void, or if you do not mention void, it is one and the same thing. So a variable declared to be of type int can be used to contain integral values. That is, values do not contain decimal values. Okay. So a float is storing floating point numbers, values containing decimal values. So if it's a normal integer, then no decimal values. If you want a decimal values, then you declare it as float. Double type, as I already said, it is same as float with roughly twice the precision. So maybe with float you will have 2, with double you can have 4. Okay, so for example, 12 is an integer, 12.24 is a float, whereas 12.2456 would be double. Okay, so precision is which comes after the decimal. The char data type can be used to store a single character, such as letter A, the digit 6, or a semicolon. Similarly, a variable declared character can only store character data type. See, I may going a bit fast. If you think, then you can, this recording is already there. You can go back and, check out this recording. Anyways, whenever you want to understand a concept, you should go through the recording at least 2 to 3 times. Then only you try to understand the topic more clearly. Okay, so going ahead, there are 2 types of type qualifier in C: size qualifier and sign qualifier. So size qualifier short and long. Okay, whereas sign qualifier is signed and unsigned. So if there is only positive integers, then that is unsigned. Okay, because there is no sign in it. Is it only plus? So if you do not write plus, it is as good as it is positive. But if you are declaring a data type as signed, then you can also include negative values. Okay, whereas long and short, it is on depending upon size. Okay, so short will have less data type, less data bytes. You can store the range, and long is that you have a longer range to store. That's the only difference. So we will come that one by one. So when qualifier unsigned is used, the number is always positive. Okay, as I rightly said. And when the signed is used, the number can be negative or positive. If the signed qualifier is not mentioned, then by default it is signed qualifier is assumed. So the range of the values of signed qualifier is less than the unsigned. Why? Suppose, for example, the range is 10. So if it's a signed qualifier, it will go to plus 10 and then minus 10. So actually, if the range is 10, it will go to 5. Because if total 10 values are there, it will be plus 5. Okay, 0 to plus 5 and then 0 to -5, total 10 values. But if it's a positive number, it will go from 0 to 10. So it becomes double actually. Are you getting it? I hope this is clear. So the range of values for signed type is less than the unsigned type. Because in signed type, the leftmost bit is used in the representation sign, while in the unsigned type, this bit is also used to represent the value. The size and range of the different data types on the 16-bit machine, okay, is as follows. So we are just discussing the simple basic 16-bit machine. Obviously, you can find the range of whatever processor you are using. If you get the range, what is the range size, you will be able to calculate once I tell you the logic right now. So suppose you are using a char or an unsigned char. So byte size is 1 and the range is -128 to 127. Similarly, the range of everything is given for int, for float and double. Okay, now let's see how this has come. -128 to 127. Now, char requires 1 byte. So here, I'll just repeat, char or signed char. Okay, now I already told you that in this previous thing that if you do not mention, you only say char, then by default it will be signed only. If you have to mention that it should be unsigned, okay, you should have only positive values. Then you should have to mention unsigned. Okay, so I'll just copy this. Now I'll repeat. Char is 1 byte. 1 byte means char requires 1 byte. Integer requires 2 bytes. So now I'll show you the calculation of char. So char is 1 byte, requires 1 byte in C language. This is equal to 8 bits. Right? Now 8 bits. In computer language, you need to go exponential. So that means it will require 2 to the power 8. So 2 to the power 8. 2 to the power 8 is actually 256. Okay, now 256 divided by 2. It is 128. Just note, huh? So 128. Since you write only char C. Char C is actually, this means signed char C. And if you want to mention unsigned, only positive numbers, then it should be unsigned char C. So if it is unsigned char C, it means 1 byte, 8 bits, 2 to the power 8, 256. It will have the range 256, means 256 characters you can define. But 256 in computer, it will start from 0 to 255, right? So here, if I go to this document again, you will just note that unsigned char is of the range 0 to 255. How it came, I just showed you over here. The calculation. You can just take a pic of this so that you understand, or you go through the recording again. Now, for signed char C, signed char. Okay, this will be signed char. The range is, of course, 256. But 256 may say half would be positive and half would be negative. So it will be 128. 28 would be positive and 128 negative. So how it will come from -127 to 0, it will be, and another range would be 0 to 1, it will be 1 to 128. And if you do the total of all this, it will be 256 only. The only thing is, signed character also will have 256 range, but it will vary from minus 127. Okay, it's not visible here. I'll write it here. It will be minus 127 to plus 128. Okay, so this over here it is mentioned that minus 128 to 127. Okay, this can be modified to make you more clear. How? Since it was unsigned char C, it was 0 total 256, so it was 0 to 256, sorry, 255. That is total 256 because it starts from 0 in computer. Similarly, for signed, it will start from 0 to actually 127. And while reverse, it will go from minus 1 to 128. Clear? So now actually that range of signed char C would be minus 128 to plus 127. Now I hope this is clear to you. So we will go here and let's finalize. So for signed character, it will be minus 128 to 127. For unsigned character, it will be 0 to 255. If it is not clear, just go through the recording again. You will understand. And likewise, you will be able to calculate now for int, float and double. Now, let's take this example once so that rest now you can do as homework. Okay, we will take for integer. So integer requires 2 bytes. It is mentioned here. Okay, signed also 2 byte and unsigned also 2 byte. So we need to now, you can take a pic of this immediately and then I will clear it out and show you for integer. Okay, so now int requires 2 bytes, int I. So it requires 2 bytes. 2 bytes means 16 bits. So just tell me what is 2 to the power 16? It is actually 65. If you calculate 65536. So the range would go from 0 to 65535. Okay. I'll repeat, integer requires 2 bytes. 2 bytes means 16 bits. So 2 to the power 16 is 65,536. So this is the range. So in computer, it will start from 0 to 65,535. So that means this minus 1. Okay. 6 minus 1. You can write like this also. So you can even do coding of that. So example, if suppose any data type requires n bytes. So what will be the range? If you are a coder, you have to write the algorithm. So if any data type requires n bytes. Okay, so the range of unsigned would be 0 to 2 to the power of n, okay, minus 1. This is the formula. So over here, your range is 0 to 2 to the power 16 minus 1 for unsigned integer. Okay, this is for unsigned integer. You can take the pick. For signed integer, the formula, now what will happen? Like previously we did for character. Okay, so 65,536 divided by 2, because we want half, no? Half positive and half negative. So it will be 65,536 divided by 2. That will come to 32768 if you just calculate. So your range would go from minus 32768. Okay, previously it was character. Character का range 256 था. 256 divided by 128. It was going from minus 128 to 0. And then 0 to plus 127. So here it will be minus 32768 to 0 and 0 to plus 32767. Because if it's starting from 0, it has to be in positive number, it has to be ended to minus 1. Okay. So formula, so this is now what we saw over here. So this range, if you can note here, this range is for unsigned int. Sorry, this is for signed int. Signed int range. I have told you in this lecture how to calculate it. So now it is clear. So this is the range. For signed int, for unsigned int, the range is 0 to 1, 0 to 65535. I hope it is clear. So the formula now we will just derive. For this formula we derived for, this was for unsigned int, right? Now we will be deriving for signed int. So this goes this way. Minus, okay, minus 2 to the power of n, okay, it's a generalized, divided by 2, 20. Okay, so 20, instead of writing 20, we will directly write 2 plus 2 to the power of n divided by 2 and then minus 1. So this will be our formula for unsigned int. So I'll just repeat with this formula, try to take the example. So since this is integer and this is signed, so this is 2 power 16. So 2 to the power 16 is, if you evaluate this, this is 65,536 divided by 2. This will come over here as 32768. So this is the range 32768. Okay. Now this 2 will come over here. So this 2 is over here. Now how to get this value? Is it matching? 2 to the power n, it is again 65,536 divided by 2. It will be 32,768 minus 1. So 32,768 minus 1 is 32767. So this is the range. So this is the formula for signed int. For any data type, this is the formula for any unsigned data type. And this is how we calculated for the signed int, and this is how we calculated for unsigned int. In previously, we saw how to calculate for signed and unsigned integer. So here you get the entire list, and I want you to do as homework rest of the calculations so that you understand as a computer engineer why this range has come up. So if suppose you do not want this type of range in integer, this much big, so there is also a shorter range called short, okay, which we were mentioning previously. Okay, so that you can explore from Google, that what is the range of short and what are the current compilers, and C language is having different data types, because this is what I'm teaching you is a traditional. So there can be a lot of advancement. So you can go through that on Google and check it. But these are the basics. If you understand even this much, okay, you can be a very good coder. BCom students, management students, BCA, even school students today are doing C language. That's not a big deal. But most importantly for an engineering student is to go into those technical details, what's happening inside on operating system level, on programming level, on compiler level. So that is more important for you to understand, because you need to design the compiler. Okay, those people are using the compilers. You need to design a compiler at one level. So you should know all these things in detail. So if you have any doubt, you can ask me on WhatsApp group or maybe on description box. Okay, so I would request you to do this homework, so that the more you practice it, whatever you have shared, you practice it on your own, on your book. If you have any doubt, go through the recording and then let me know if you are finding anything blockage. So we will stop here for the day. Okay, next time we will be discussing about the constants. Okay.
The PDF.
So thank you very much for your patience listening. We'll stop here. This is Dr. Ayesha Butalia signing off for the day.